Boom, we are live, ladies and gentlemen. Feels good to be live right now. We have a special guest for you. We have the CEO of Caleb and Brown, Dr. Prash. Prash, how are you doing today?
Morning. I'm well. It's
Beautiful.
other side of the world here.
Yeah, so you're currently situated in Australia, right? What part of Australia?
In Melbourne.
Oh, nice.
Lovely
One
little
of the
city
main
that it is.
cities. So right from the get-go, introduce yourself to the Bear family, your background, and how you ended up where you are today. This is a nice little intro.
Okay, that's a relatively convoluted story. So I run Caleb and Brown, which is a dedicated cryptocurrency brokerage, or the oldest cryptocurrency brokerage in Australia. Which, considering in cryptocurrency terms, is old. Probably isn't old in traditional brokerage terms, but that's the ecosystem that we operate in. And what we run is a brokerage in the very traditional sense of a brokerage, and that every client gets a personal broker who handles all of their cryptocurrency needs. So it's just dedicated to cryptocurrencies. So think of a financial advisor or a wealth manager, but purely for the cryptocurrency ecosystem. But my background is, it's quite varied. I came from a medical background. I'm a medical doctor by training. I did my training in psychiatry. And the transition has been an interesting one. I've always been very involved in the libertarian realm. And I trace it back to about 4 or 5 years ago. I was writing a talk on cognitive liberty, the idea that we should all have the freedom not just to think what we want, but to be able to think to the limits of what we possibly could. And I stumbled across this idea, this concept really, at about 2 in the morning, of fiscal liberty, which is something I'd never considered before. I'd never had to consider before. What's fiscal liberty? The idea you grow up in a developed first world democracy or pseudo democracy, and you believe that your money is always yours to spend, right? And then I started reading this article, and then I eventually ended up on that first Bitcoin white paper. And I won't say the world is never the same again instantly, but the world has never been the same since. And that was sort of the pathway through which I ended up in the cryptocurrency world. I firmly believe it's the future, and I wanted a slice of that future. So that's how we sort of are where we are today.
Beautiful. Yeah. So the medical background, aside from, I guess, first off, the discipline study that it takes to get there helps as being a sitting CEO, and the draw towards libertarianism. I think that's one of the original things that brought me into Bitcoin too, was that empowering individuals. One of the weakest parts of our society was the fact that we had given, the control of the printing of money to a set group of people, and Bitcoin really offers that system. So Caleb and Brown does OTC stuff. You guys are acting kind of as a fiduciary or financial assessment managers as well. So you guys have a whole in-house team for people that are looking to buy, store either large amounts or average amounts. So tell us what an average. So I'm just so everyone knows, I've signed up with Caleb and Brown. I've used their private brokerage stuff for this. Great. It's nice to have someone you can chat with, fill out an order form. But tell us some of the advantages of working with Caleb and Brown as compared to just buying off a regular trade desk.
Sure. I'd probably split into the fact that there are 3 layers of brokerage in a way. We've got at the large end of the scale, the large volume OTC deals. And that's always a tricky market, and possibly something that we'll discuss. And in a market like that, having a trusted third party to act as the intermediary to help broker those deals are one region of our service proposition. But our primary service proposition is probably it's twofold, I guess. It's either for the high net worth individual who's looking to, one, put a large amount of money, let's say he's trying to put $2-3 million of money into the cryptocurrency market, doesn't want to do it in exchange for obvious reasons, because he's going to shoot himself in the foot just with slippage, doesn't want to price himself out, and more than that, doesn't have the time to be, one, doing it himself, and two, to be managing his own portfolio, which is where having your own personalized broker, so it's very much a white glove service, I guess, your own personalized broker who is able to take you through the entire process, so everything from education to wallet setup, to then helping you with your portfolios, helping you with diversification of your portfolios, helping you with introduction to new projects. and then on the other end, closing the loop with in-house tax consultancy. That's the sort of model that we operate under, and it's something that, particularly for the high net worth market, has been something of great value. But the third tier of brokerage is for the more, well, if you want to call it that, the average investor. The investor is putting in $5, $10, $15, $20,000, for whom the value proposition isn't so much that need to get large volumes in, but it's the knowledge gap. So perhaps the less sophisticated investor, the investor who wants to get in, but maybe doesn't exactly know how, doesn't have the know-how, doesn't trust themselves, and possibly intelligently so, doesn't trust themselves to navigate this market as it moves forward. When you consider the kind of volatility we have in this market, unless you're following it day to day, pretending that you're a trader or pretending that you're a seasoned investor is a very tricky business. And for investors in sort of that mold, the main value proposition for our service again becomes that one single point of contact who you can talk to about your investments, who helps guide you through the process, who sets you up from the beginning. And very importantly for a lot of people, I guess, it's the question of what happens when I want to get out of the market. That's a fear for a lot of people that isn't necessarily addressed by the traditional exchange methods. And the fact that we can get someone into the market within the same day, and as a result get someone out of the market just about instantly, is an enormous value proposition, because it removes a lot of the fear of if something were to go wrong, if I needed to get out in a hurry, how would I be able to do that? Well, you just pick up your phone, you call your broker, you send the coins over, and we liquidate that for you instantly. So that probably outlines some of the key value propositions that we offer. As a brokerage, we've always got multiple add-on services, and more add-on services that we're sort of trying to incorporate now, but that's probably the crux of what we do.
Yeah, in the early days, and we're still very much so in the early days, the ability to help clients, first off, find out what they're investing in, because I'm sure there's a lot of even us, we get calls from fans for quotes and ideas all the time. We do our best to send them in the right direction, but there's just so little comprehension about what this space is yet, and how to access it too. So just for those of you that aren't aware, you guys offer basically a wire in and wire out service, similar, which is extremely important, especially if you want to take profit and actually put it into another investment, whether it's property or a business, something like this. So I know one of the questions that probably is on a lot of people's minds is, how do you think this whole idea of, there's a lot of articles lately coming out about wash trading and how they suspect that a fair amount of these exchanges are just boasting big numbers or just fake trades back and forth. How do you feel the OTC market and any of these kind of backdoor trades affect the market price?
Well, I guess the idea behind OTC trading is that it doesn't affect the market price. That's the sort of baseline assumption that we all go by. And a true OTC broker is trying his avid best not to affect the market price, because we're working with very deep liquidity pools. We're working with dark pools. We're working with funds that are already holding large volume assets, and who, when you sell into them, they're not going out there and dumping it on the market. That would be the main difference between, I guess, a brokerage firm and a rogue OTC broker. Now, there are plenty of rogue OTC brokers going around. I get on average about 3 to 4 LinkedIn messages a week. Now, it used to be far more than that, from people claiming to be OTC brokers and willing to broker these large volume deals. And we've seen it in the past where you'd have a deal conclude and you'd have a sell order for almost exactly the same amount suddenly appear on an exchange somewhere. And that's not an OTC broker. That's just someone selling onto an exchange. And it's impossible to ignore the fact that that's happening. And that happening is going to start to affect the market price. Or you have people who are purporting to be OTC brokers, but who are acting on behalf of the multiple whales you have out there who are doing what they can to manipulate the market. Again, something that we cannot deny. That, again, ceases to be OTC brokering in the conventional sense. The other element of this discussion possibly is when you have large financial institutions coming into the market in a pretty big way. So we know institutions like Fidelity, even institutions like Goldman are starting to buy up large volumes of cryptocurrency, that they've launched their own cryptocurrency divisions, and you would imagine that they would be buying on an OTC basis, considering the volumes that they're buying in. Now, their purchases perhaps wouldn't be realized on the market until perhaps further down the line, when you start to see them maybe diversify that into other assets, and that's promising in a way, because it tells us that there's reserves there that have yet to be actualized on the market. But when that will come to fruition, when that will come to show, that's anyone's guess, I suppose.
Right, because we still know, I mean, we still know that there's probably around 100 wallets that have 50,000 plus Bitcoins in them that have been dormant since pre-2014. And we have seen a few of them start to come online since earlier this year. And it's not a large amount, but it's definitely enough to make a difference if you were to throw it all on the public markets.
Absolutely.
See, one of the things, Prash, that's always kind of thrown me into a spin is just trying to understand that sentiments as a value. That, you know, a lot of this stuff, there is no intrinsic value to anything other than the fact that once you're outside of survival, we have the privilege to, you know, I guess, ascertain a value for something, whether it's like fine art or any other collector's type of asset. How much do you think? This is kind of a hard question to ask, because I don't know exactly how to ask it, but I know the point of OTC is to not affect the market price. That way you don't have any slippage in either direction. But do you think that do you think the OTC markets in any way have been negative to the price because of the lack of the public trading for some of the bigger funds?
I suppose to some extent. One thing that I would point out that probably has been negative to the price is that we don't see that as much of that today, but you may remember this. If we backtrack about a year ago, you saw, maybe even more than that, you saw enormous discounts being offered by OTC brokers. You'd see people shopping around for deals that were 5% below market, 6% under spot. And that raised a dangerous situation, because you ran the risk of people buying up these amounts and then dumping it at spot price, or even under spot price, because you had that much room to move, that much wiggle room, that much of a buffer. That, I think, certainly did not help the market in any way. So that's one element of it. The second element of it is, yes, unfortunately, we are an ecosystem that's very dependent on, one, on adoption, but also two, on trading volume. And when trading volume goes down, people stop moving, and people stop moving, that tends to be this general attrition out of the market. That's sort of what we've seen in the last year. The flatness of the market has been a steady sort of downward trend, rather than the other way around. And so, yes, I guess you could attribute the OTC market to that in some extent, but I don't think there's an immediate solution for that. I think that's just something that the market has had to sort of cope with. But that the various sort of four factors that could have pushed the market up without necessarily pinning it all down on the OTC market per se.
Yeah, it seems that almost to some degree that a bear and bull market trend have almost very little to do with the trading, and it's riding almost entirely off the emotions of the I think they call it the irrational exuberance, and it goes in both directions, because again, there is no intrinsic value to anything outside of survival. It's one of the most profound questions to ask myself, is try to understand, you know, the value of something. What makes like a Basquiat painting or a Banksy? It's really just the buyer and seller choosing to agree on a price, and that has nothing to do with the intrinsic value of a piece in any way, shape, or form. Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the awards? Because I know you guys have won awards in the fintech space in Australia, and some of the work that you guys have been doing, I guess, to grow in the Australian ecosystem.
Yeah, thank you. It's a very kind segue. The one we're most proud of, I suppose, because it fits into the direction that we're heading in, is last year we were awarded FinTech Startup of the Year by the Stockbrokers and Financial Advisors Association. And that was particularly poignant for a number of reasons. One, because we certainly did not expect the industry that I guess for a long time, a lot of us have considered the other side of the fence, the stockbrokers, the financial advisors, to come out and give us that recognition. That was a huge step. I'd like to say that it was a huge step for the industry as a whole, to get that recognition, to have the financial advisors recognize that, one, this is an industry that could no longer be ignored, that could no longer be laughed at, and was something that they actually had to try and understand more. But in addition, I think it was a validation of our model, of our business model, and the way we operated, because from the outset, one of our main sort of core principles was to try and align ourselves to the way the traditional financial services system operated. And there's a very simple reason for that. You've got a crypto market capital, well, now, in the somewhere between 100 to $200 billion. You've got market capital of gold, which is $7 trillion. And you've got approximately, in terms of being held, of high net worth investor funds being held by traditional financial advisors, you've got about $70 trillion out there. If you can make enough inroads into that $70 trillion market, if you can convince enough of those people that this is a market that's worth investing in, if you can sell those people onto this idea by speaking their language, by operating in a model that is familiar to them, that gives them the comfort that they're willing to invest some of those funds into this ecosystem. Even if you've got, I don't know, man, you do the math, but you've got 0.1%, 0.01% of that come into the crypto ecosystem, you're going to be doing not just a great service to your firm, but also a great service to the industry as a whole. And that's one of the primary reasons why we aligned ourselves in that direction. It's the reason why we've built ourselves into that brokerage model that traditional high net worth investors are comfortable with, and in a way they want to operate, and with a level of, I guess, legitimacy, validity that fits with the traditional financial services space. It's meant that it's been a more expensive operation. It's meant that it's been an operation that's more high touch, that's much more human resources intensive, and a lot more complicated to manage, I suppose, than just pulling up an exchange and letting it go live. But I think it's worth it in the long run, and I think that's where the industry is going to head moving forward. I think it's inevitable that with any asset class, it may start off as an alternative asset class, but if it's got any legs to it, it's going to gently move into the more non-alternative asset space, and that's where we're sort of gearing ourselves.
Yeah, that makes sense. A quote comes to mind here. Some of the people that made the most money during the gold rush were the people that were selling backpacks and shovels. And right. if you can find a niche where there's energy and flow, it's smart to do so. And sometimes what they call like a micro niche, right? Because you guys weren't aiming to be Binance necessarily. You're aiming at a very specific style of clientele and customer. I think it's a very adaptive way to go, and much more personal too. I mean, I think it's needed in the market at a larger scale. It's one of the reasons why I rant all the time, is just to try to make people feel more comfortable about the whole process. Try to remind everyone that their wealth is in here, and that anything as they grow their portfolio is a term of like education. So I think you guys have done a great deal for the market. I've had a pleasure meeting your guys' team so far. I know we've sent a few people your way. We just wrote an article about you guys as well, which is actually ranking quite well. So I'm excited. But we're just about to get into the crux of it too, because we haven't seen the real masses move yet, and I think it's obvious by the let's say the amount of females or women that are in this sector, not because they're not interested in tech, but they're interested in a more socially dynamic and empowered space. And we've had a lot of the talking heads were all males arguing about some nonsense technical terms, whereas I think the community just in general needs a lot more people that are figureheads that are supportive of the growth of the ecosystem, instead of the arguments about whose company is better or why. So I'm really grateful for the work that you guys do here.
Can I
Now,
add in a point right there?
yes.
Just as you were talking about women. So I wrote an article last week about the role of women in cryptocurrency and why there aren't, sort of lamenting why there aren't more and discussing why perhaps there should be more. One of the things that I talked about there, which sort of ties into this and that made a lot of sense to me, is the fact that you consider that in the traditional financial services space, there is, one of the reasons that's been attributed to why there aren't more women in finance, why there aren't more women in leadership in finance, is that, I mean, there's hundreds of years of glass ceilings above them, right? There's years and years, generations of hierarchy before them that is going to be hard to break, and ingrained models of what a hierarchical leadership structure looks like, and they're all wearing suits and walking to the men's toilet. But in the cryptocurrency industry, it's fresh. It doesn't have all that ingrained stigma, all that ingrained structure. I mean, it's a disruptive technology, not just as a technology, but it's a disruptive structure as well, or has a capacity to, because it doesn't have that preordained model. And that's the bit that always surprises is probably too strong a term, but always gets me feeling like it's ripe. It's ripe for women to be as represented as men are. And very topically this week, I mean, it's been a very distracting week for us here in the Southern Hemisphere with what happened in New Zealand. And it's one of the things that's highlighted for me most, apart from the tragedy of the whole situation. I don't know how much of that you've been following, but Jacinta Ardern, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, and the way she has responded to this whole, to the crisis, to the tragedy, has been, I struggle to find the words to describe it. She has moved me to tears. She has been an example of leadership in a way that I don't think we've seen leadership in the modern age in a very long time. And for me, what keeps coming up is the fact that she has responded, and her style of leadership that she's demonstrated is one of empathy, is one with a softness, is one with, and someone wrote about this that I read somewhere, is one displaying all the qualities that are normally associated or normally put forward as weaknesses perhaps in women, and why they won't survive in leadership or why they won't survive in finance. But she has demonstrated exactly those qualities, and it's been exactly those qualities that have demonstrated how successful a leader she has been. And I think she's a shining knight in terms of being an example for why women can utilize this sort of ingrained, innate qualities, leadership qualities. And I do wish that we see more of that in the cryptocurrency space. I think it will change the dynamic incredibly. I think it will change the conversations that we have, and I think it will earth us considerably more than we do now.
Yeah, we without, if we don't have the women agree with us here, then we're not going. There is no such thing as mass adoption. I mean,
yeah, it's half mass adoption.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to speak too much out of my with my tongue here, but you know, the women have been the progenitors of our future generations for many years now, and I think one of the things that's, or at least one of the things that I think is probably the most inspiring, is the ability to empower other individuals, the relationships in the world of the impoverished, or the ability to have a better types of governance systems, essentially, that the social impact space is really what I think is going to drive mass adoption. Is because as soon as as more women start to realize how much this can change the role of power, and or at least change the centralization of power, that they're going to jump on board regardless of if they like tech or not, because this is a space that really provides more connection to the social empowerment of other individuals. It's what originally drew me here, because I like code, or because I wanted to make a bunch of money with Bitcoin, is I believe that the only route to empowering other people is by creating decentralized versions of the money system. And it's this quote always comes to mind, and a good friend of mine told it to me. But Andy Warhol says, you know, one of the things I like about Coca-Cola is that I know I'm drinking the same Coca-Cola as the Queen. And then there's a certain there's a certain part to we'll call it a deflationary process, where now everybody has the technology that we have in our pockets is better than what the U.S. military had, 30 years ago. So it's one of these weird abstractions where the further we go down the line of deflationary technology and capitalism, we're actually opening the door for everyone. Like the fact that we're live right now to, a few hundred people, and then thousands of people will listen to it. This is a small media broadcast company that the only reason we exist is because the decentralization of power to some degree. So it's been such a fascinating topic for me, and I think we're really close to that line too. I think once we hit the bottom, the way we build, hopefully we can remove some of the abrasive talking heads and make this space a lot more as attractive as it should be, because this to me was always about empowering other individuals to be sovereign with their own financial choices. Like you could pick sunglasses if you wanted.
Yes, absolutely. You talk about again, sort of continuing on that same theme of empowerment, social impact, and if you keep the on theme with talking about women. One thing that's often been discussed, and you probably agree with me, is that one of the greatest potentials for the cryptocurrency realm is not necessarily in the developed world, but in the developing world, right? In places where people have no access to financial services, in places where inflation is, this hyperinflation. It's in places like that we possibly see the greatest future promise. If you consider sub-Saharan Africa, if you consider large parts of South America. And interestingly, in a lot of these places, these are a lot of the places that haven't yet had the kind of uptake of the cryptocurrency realm yet, which fills me with a lot of promise in terms of what the future potential lies, because you have billions. Sorry?
Oh, yeah, sorry. No, you had dropped out there for a second, so I was filling in the space. You just came back online.
Right. Where did I drop out?
No, for maybe about the last 15 seconds.
Oh, right. Okay. Where was I? I was talking about the potential in the developing world. That cryptocurrencies, the bulk of their potential really are not in as much in the developed world the way we're seeing it now, but in the developing world. Are you getting that bit? Are you hearing me okay?
Yeah, it's breaking up a little bit still. I'm not sure. Maybe it's on my end. It could be on my end. I do live in the middle of nowhere.
Okay, right.
I'm here. I'll ask everyone in the chat. Yeah, try it again.
In the meantime, I'll adjust this. I just realized all you see is the tongue above my head, which is almost a little obscene. And this is the whole point of my bull. But anyway.
Nice. There we go.
Yeah, that's
okay. Yeah, we're rolling smooth now.
Okay. What I was getting at was that we, as much as we talk about this a lot in the developed world, and cryptocurrencies in the developed world, we're missing a lot of the point if we don't consider that some of the utmost potential for this ecosystem is in the developing world, in places where there's hyperinflation, in places where there's no trust in the government, in places where you have billions of people sitting there with no access to financial services. And that's, for me, a lot of where the future of this industry lies, and a lot of where the future potential lies, one. Secondly, in a lot of these places, a lot of the families, a lot of the homes are run by women. It's the women who control the finances in the home, because they're the ones going out to the market. They're the ones going out to do the shopping. I won't necessarily always call them matriarchal societies, but certainly the locus of operational control tend to be with women. And again, further reason why having women understand this ecosystem better is absolutely integral, I think, to the growth of this industry, particularly as we move into that developing world. That's just something that's been on my mind a lot recently.
Yeah, you're right. I've talked about this a few times in our episodes as well, that some of the true functions of the blockchain, and Bitcoin specifically, is the ability to empower the places where you can't normally get a bank account or have any type of financial services to begin with. And most of us in the Western world are privileged to the point where most people don't even understand what's wrong with the US dollar, let alone why something like Bitcoin would be valuable to these emerging markets, or even to themselves. I think I've used the relationship of, you have the American economy is essentially cancerous, virus and they just haven't gone to the doctor to find out the problem. So there's no, of course, they're not going to ingest a medicine of any kind. They don't even know that they're sick yet.
Yeah, it's a good one. I'll remember that one.
So, and I was actually studying a little bit of, I know this is a little off topic, but I think it's Muhammad Yunus. He won the Nobel Peace Prize for creating the microfinancing ideas and microfinancing businesses in Africa.
In Africa.
And I think it was in Africa and India. And he said that they're the best performing applicants were always women. That if a woman applied, they would always give the loans because they always got paid back. So I think this is just in general the empowerment of individuals is such a unique process in the blockchain space. It's really what brought me here. If this space is only about making money or investing, there's no way I would have stuck around. But the philosophical core of this will always keep me bringing back, because I feel that the only way I can feel better in life is if everyone starts to feel better in life. Yeah. Well, Prash, I don't want to run us over too long. Everyone that hasn't yet, you could check out the links below for Caleb and Brown. You could sign up through our partner link as well, which is an express verification. You have to do all your standard KYC, AML, just like you would with any other exchange. I would suggest just signing up with them and going through the process. Again, the wire in and out is a huge deal. Again, for most exchanges, whether it's through Coinbase, they're very limited. It's a big pain in the ass to do any business with them. So Caleb and Brown has been a great intermediary. I look forward to when I have to make a big trade again.
I can clarify that we, again, one of the value propositions, because I understand that a lot of your listeners are around the world, is that we take any major fiat currency. So there's no restrictions really, unless you're in a country with really strong fiscal controls. Really, we take about any major fiat currency and turn that into any cryptocurrency that you're looking to access. And from KYC from initial contact, getting in contact with your personal broker, to getting your first trade through, we can essentially do that within the day, which is a turnaround time that I know for a fact that no exchange can compete with on a factor of multiples. So that's something I should probably reiterate at this point.
Yeah, you got to operate in multiple currencies, in multiple cryptocurrencies. I remember the last time I was on the phone checking for my friend, from Tron, EOS, XRP, you guys have access to everything on your desk, which is hugely valuable. And then again, that proposition of having a private broker, I think it just makes it feel a bit more personal. We get so used to making trades that are computer based. We forget the value.
Writing into support at any exchange? Have you tried putting in a support ticket? It's a laughable experience. The fact that the word support is used, I find always a laughable experience when it comes to any exchange. And it was the frustration with that which made me go, no, this is never going to happen with us. Like, a key part of this whole thing has to be the relationship.
Yeah, so you guys get a private broker. I remember I was on the phone with Jeff within the first 15 or 20 minutes of the approval and stuff. And again, that's super important, especially when you're dealing with family offices or just larger high net worth individuals. They're looking for that more personalized touch. They we kind of want people to hold our hand through that process. So what I'd like to do is we'll have you back on. We'll try to get you as a recurring guest, because I know this is going to do nothing but grow, and people are going to continue to ask the same questions and new ones. And hopefully we can maybe find a way to get me to Australia to come visit.
Please, yeah.
Because I've never been. So anyway.
Radio. Okay, that's a conversation to be had.
Beautiful. Ladies and gentlemen, check out calebandbrown.com if you're interested. If you want, you can sign up again through our referral links. Just a partner link. It just expresses the verification process. Give us those thumbs up if you like this content. Remember to follow Caleb and Brown on Twitter and the rest of their social media channels as well. Join our Telegram channel in the links below. We've got a kind and supportive community out there of great people. Dr. Prash, I'm very grateful for your time. Bear Family, again, sharing your greatest asset with us, your time and your attention. Again, thank you guys all so much. And I guess we'll see you again on the next episode.
Thank you very much for having me.
Beautiful. And Prash, I'll keep you around just for a minute afterwards too, after we end this off. So Bear Family, have yourselves a great day.